Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a focused look into a series of articles by Sylvia Ola, specifically parts 1, 2, and 3, all titled Women Are the Baseline for Men.
Our mission in this deep dive is to really pull out the essential insights and core arguments presented within these sources. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding one particular perspective on modern gender dynamics, relationships, and, importantly, the challenges the author argues men are facing today.
That's right, and it's crucial to frame this up front. We are diving deep into the arguments presented by this author in these specific articles. Our goal is to understand her viewpoint, her perspective, the evidence and reasoning she provides.
Without endorsing or refuting those views ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These articles offer a provocative view, certainly critical of the current state of male-female dynamics. She argues men have fallen behind, but they also lay out what she believes is necessary for balance.
Which hints at a path forward and defines what strength looks like in her estimation.
So let's jump straight into the core premise that kicks off this series. It's central and, yeah, perhaps intentionally provocative. Women are the baseline for men.
Okay, let's unpack this. When the author says women are the baseline for men, what does she actually mean? In part one, she introduces the idea that to maintain a healthy dynamic and sort of societal balance,
Men must continuously aim to be better than women.
right, not in some absolute cosmic sense, but relative to the woman they're engaging with financially, intellectually, capability, strength, you name it. The woman is the standard, the baseline. A man must exceed.
She then describes two paths a man can potentially take when confronted with this baseline idea. One path which she frames positively.
That's the one where the man accepts this baseline and constantly strives to elevate himself, raising his own bar to stay above or, ahead of the woman's level.
And the other path she describes, the one she critiques pretty heavily, is if he doesn't or maybe can't raise his own game.
Then he might try to hold the woman down. That's the step-aside dynamic she mentions, citing that Harrison Bucker example right at the start of Part I as illustrating this pressure for women to kind of shrink themselves.
But what's fascinating in her presentation of this baseline concept is how she describes the ideal interaction. She argues that truly competent men actually support women's growth.
Yeah, and when both the man and the woman are actively raising their own bars, pushing themselves to be better, they can grow together. She calls this a beautiful and delicate dance of mutual elevation. It sounds quite dynamic.
Okay, so if that's the author's ideal, men pushing themselves, using women as the standard, women growing alongside, then, in her view, what caused things to go wrong?
Yeah.
She gets into this, addressing that common perception that men today seem, weaker or are struggling.
Right, and her argument isn't that men have collectively become less capable or weaker in some absolute historical sense. It's more nuanced.
She posits that women have simply caught up and, in many areas, surpassed many men because men failed to elevate themselves at the same pace, while women were rapidly advancing.
And she grounds this in historical context. She explains that historically, men's power and position came largely from structural advantages.
They were the main earners, had better access to education,
Yep.
held more rights.
Precisely because women were legally, financially, and socially held back. They weren't allowed to compete on an equal footing.
And in her narrative, women didn't just sit back. They actively fought for their rights, they entered the workforce, higher education, became financially independent.
Which, she argues, effectively leveled the playing field. It removed those artificial barriers that had kept women below men in so many societal metrics.
And her core point here is pretty stark. While women were doing all this challenging uphill work, men, in her words, forgot to elevate themselves.
Yeah. And this historical perspective leads her to ask a really crucial question.
If men's traditional strength and power were only derived from women being held back, from being denied the ability to compete, was that ever true strength? Or the kind of power needed today in a world where women are free and capable?
That's a provocative question. And moving from this historical shift, the author spends quite a bit of time detailing what she sees as the consequences of this failure to elevate. She focuses on what she describes as male dysfunction and pretty pointedly abdication of responsibility.
She claims there's robust data indicating dysfunctional male behavior. She cites things like increases in domestic violence, mental health issues.
Specifically correlated, in her view, with situations where women out-earn or generally outdo their male partners.
And her explanation for this delves into what she describes as biological and psychological needs. She argues men have this intrinsic drive to feel needed, capable, powerful.
And the modern system Women's rights, protective laws, better job access while necessary and fought for by women, has, in her view, inadvertently shrunk the traditional avenues for men to fulfill these needs, like being the sole protector or the primary provider.
Okay, here's where her critique gets very specific, and you could say controversial, in the source material. She brings up examples she sees as clear instances of men abdicating what she considers their protective roles.
Especially when women and children face challenges from, say, systemic or governmental actions.
She asks directly, where are the men? The fathers, partners, brothers, when biological males are competing in women's sports, for instance.
Or housed in female prisons. Or when women and girls have to share private spaces like changing rooms with biological males. She's very specific.
She also questions where fathers are when children are exposed to what she characterizes as inappropriate sexual content or ideologies in schools.
And what really stands out here is the contrast she draws. She deliberately highlights the people actively fighting these specific battles.
Against biological males in women's sports or in female prisons, challenging policies on changing rooms or school curricula.
Are predominantly women. She specifically names figures like Riley Gaines as examples of women leading these fights.
It's a sharp challenge she poses to men. Is this inaction driven by fear? Fear of being canceled, losing jobs, social standing?
And she argues that some causes fundamentally, protecting your family, your daughters, your wives, are simply worth the risk, worth the potential professional or social fallout.
She reframes the whole concept of protection for today. It's not about fighting off rival tribes anymore.
Right. Protection, in her view, now means men standing up and acting when the government or wider society fails to protect the women in their lives.
And her critique of male responses is blunt. She says men often look the other way, maybe saying things like, well, you women wanted independence, now protect yourselves.
Or lamenting that men are being destroyed by society. But her counter-argument is powerful.
She argues men aren't being destroyed by women's advancement or societal change. They are destroying themselves by choosing dysfunction, complacency, inaction, over-effort, and elevation.
She states quite plainly, it's not that women became strong and left men behind, it's that men stayed behind and now complain about the consequences. That's a direct hit.
Yeah, it really is. Following this strong critique, the author shifts focus in part 2 to discuss, from her and her friend's perspective, what women today actually want in partners. And this ties directly back to that initial premise about men needing to elevate.
Right, she uses that memorable IKEA table analogy.
Ah, yes, the IKEA table.
When some men ask what women bring to a relationship, she and her friends apparently respond that the table many men offer today is like something simple from IKEA.
Functional.
Easily assembled maybe, but not exactly aspirational.
And women, often being highly educated, financially capable, can easily match or exceed that standard themselves.
Which leads her to explain why, in her observation, more women are choosing singlehood or leaving relationships. Her view is that many men simply aren't offering anything that women don't already have or can't comfortably get on their own.
So if the relationship doesn't add significant value beyond what she already provides for herself, why bother?
Exactly. She also touches on the sort of fundamental purpose of relationships historically, suggesting the primary driver was often the practical necessity of raising children, building a stable family unit.
Love and partnership were there, but maybe secondary to creating that secure environment for kids.
And in a world where women have financial independence, legal rights, the necessity of a male partner for survival or child-rearing security is much less pronounced. So in her view, the motivation for many women to partner up decreases if that practical need isn't the main driver anymore.
Okay, and here's where she gets incredibly specific, listing in detail the traits she and her friends find, well, unappealing in potential male partners. This links right back to men failing to meet that baseline standard she set out.
Yeah, the list in part 2 is extensive and pretty uncompromising.
It includes men who are less educated or earn less than the woman, men who lack ambition, struggle professionally, seem unable to protect or provide.
Also men who lack intellectual curiosity, don't have social circles, aren't physically active, lack emotional resilience. She's particularly critical of men who constantly dwell on misfortunes.
Or seem perpetually stuck in therapy working through issues, focus heavily on talking feelings and emotions, or easily fall into a victim mentality.
She states very clearly that these traits are simply not appealing. The list goes on. Men lacking conviction, principles, courage to stand up for beliefs.
Those she sees as having been made submissive by corporate pressures, men who are indecisive, can't lead, can't intellectually challenge the woman.
Or men who walk around burdened by, like, the world's collective pain. Her summary is pointed. Women don't want a man they feel they need to carry, emotionally or practically.
Okay, so that's a long list of don't wants. Questioning from that, what does the author state women do want, according to her and her friends?
They want what she calls power from differences, which isn't about domination, she clarifies, but about seeking a partner they can genuinely look up to.
Someone they can learn from, rely on, who provides a real sense of safety and security.
They want men who are assertive but not aggressive, men who don't just break down or, as she puts it, run to a psychologist's office at the first major hurdle.
She emphasizes the desire for strong men who persevere, who find meaning in those historical struggles of providing and protecting, who actively work to make society better, and who can truly bounce back from setbacks.
Resilience seems key there. And this perspective on what women want versus what they often find leads the author to discuss a specific dilemma she sees women facing.
Whether to shrink themselves or to leave a relationship that isn't meeting these needs she's outlined.
Right. She notes this phenomenon of highly capable women either getting into relationships below their own level or finding they significantly outgrow partners over time, but then choosing to stay.
She links this back to her natural order concept, arguing that while men historically might have benefited from marrying down to ensure dominance, it's inherently detrimental for a woman's well-being and growth to be in a relationship where she has to diminish herself.
She describes how women might instinctively adapt, maybe unconsciously holding back, shrinking their ambitions or accomplishments to maintain a perceived balance with a partner who isn't keeping pace.
She suggests this might come from some old biological wiring prioritizing stability, even if it costs personal elevation.
And she gives specific examples from the source material, like women turning down job promotions to avoid making their husbands feel insecure or inadequate.
Or her observation that women sometimes distract themselves with relentless self-improvement, extreme diets, wellness routines, yoga, meditation.
Perhaps, she suggests, as a way to channel their energy away from confronting the core issue, being with someone who just can't keep up.
Her suggested alternative for women in this spot is pretty clear. Seek a partner who genuinely matches their ambition and capability, someone who will challenge them and, crucially, raise their own bar to keep pace.
And this is the context where she directly tackles that gold-digging accusation. She refutes it really forcefully.
She argues there's often no gold to dig because these women frequently bring significant financial and professional assets themselves. They aren't looking for millionaires necessarily.
But for someone a step above their own individual baseline, that core concept again.
And crucially, she frames this desire less around pure wealth and more around that biological evolutionary need for a partner who can reliably provide and protect.
Especially during the vulnerable period of having children, yeah.
She argues women need reassurance that the man is capable of creating and maintaining a secure environment, allowing the woman to focus on nurturing.
They don't want a man who might crumble under responsibility during that crucial time, becoming yet another burden the woman has to carry. She insists this drive is biology, evolutionary psychology.
Not mercenary gold digging. That's her firm stance.
Okay, shifting gears significantly now. The author tackles the widely discussed male loneliness crisis in Part 3. And her perspective is particularly challenging.
She immediately reframes it, asks provocatively, a crisis for whom? Implying the unspoken part is that men feel left behind.
But left behind by whom? Her argument isn't that women left men behind, it's that women successfully dismantled a system that centered men and provided automatic support.
And men simply failed to keep up with the changes that resulted.
Her view is quite blunt. She sees it not as some complex societal crisis, but as a straightforward skill gap. Meaning, in her opinion, many men simply don't possess or offer the qualities and capabilities that modern, independent women are seeking. And they seem to fail to grasp how fundamentally the world has changed for women.
She even includes an observation that she finds it funny how genuinely shocked some men seem when they face rejection from women.
And how they react by focusing on and complaining about their own negative feelings about that rejection.
This leads to one of her most powerful and you could say controversial statements. Nature selects, and nature is female.
She posits this has always been true evolutionarily, but for most of human history, women's choices were constrained by necessity. Survival often meant pairing up regardless of preference.
The key difference now, in her view, is that women finally have the freedom and independence to actually exercise that natural selection based on criteria beyond just basic survival.
She uses the bird analogy here. Birds, she says, get it. They know they have to make an effort, put on a display, build a nest, do something impressive to attract a mate.
And if they get rejected, they don't, in her phrasing, spiral into an existential crisis about it.
Right. They just understand they didn't meet the standard, try harder, or look elsewhere. She contrasts this sharply with the male reaction to rejection she observes today.
So her conclusion on the male loneliness epidemic is stark, uncompromising.
She states it's nothing more, in her view, than natural selection at work. The direct consequences of their actions, or in many cases, their inaction, when they haven't kept up with the changes women have driven.
Wow. Building directly on that, she delivers a very strong, clear message in part 3. Women are not coming.
This section firmly rejects any idea that women should feel obligated to fix what the author calls the male crisis, or feel criticized for their own success.
Or that they should be expected to somehow rescue men who are struggling to adapt.
Her stance, and that of the friends she cites, is straightforward. We're not coming. Men, she argues, have to save themselves. And she frames this not as harshness, but simply as fairness.
She reinforces this with 2 core points. First, women don't have this problem of loneliness or failure to adapt in the same way, according to her analysis.
And second, she states unequivocally that men, historically, never came to help women when they were struggling against systemic oppression. Women helped themselves.
She recounts, with quite evident pride in the source material, the immense struggle women undertook. How they fought for rights, united, showed up, supported each other.
Didn't wait for men to grant permission or lift them up. Instead, they lobbied, protested, built movements from scratch.
Carved their path despite a system designed to keep them down, often without basic legal rights, no financial base, facing abuse.
And while juggling what she calls the 2 full-time jobs, paid work, plus all the unpaid household and family labor.
She contrasts this grueling historical reality very sharply with the modern male situation she describes. Women, she argues, never had the luxury of just collapsing emotionally from rejection or blaming others.
Men today, she says, face rejection by women and complain about their feelings. Women faced systemic rejection and oppression by men for centuries and responded by getting to work, enduring, building, rising.
So her conclusion is unmistakable. Women are not here to fix the male crisis. They weren't helped when they needed it. They were the help for each other.
Now she states, men must find their own path to adaptation and success, just as women did. Because in her striking phrase, the era of caring for men from the cradle to the grave is over.
She posits that this is the real, fundamental struggle many men face today. For centuries, women were that constant, reliable support system.
Effectively handing men from one female caregiver to the next, mother to wife or partner, always someone feeding them, cleaning up, providing emotional support, holding life together.
Her argument is that the moment this automatic, lifelong female support system isn't guaranteed anymore, when there isn't automatically a woman there to catch them.
Many men, in her observation, simply collapse. And it's this collapse, she argues, that's being labeled a crisis.
She addresses the idea of mutual love and support in relationships, not disputing it entirely, but questioning its application here. She uses that specific example from part 3.
The 53-year-old man whose wife takes him to therapy to understand his emotions.
Yeah. She questions whether women truly need this extra burden, feeling like they're parenting a grown man.
She brings in a personal perspective, too, asking rhetorically why she, financially independent with property, would want to take on a male partner with nothing to his name but a birth certificate.
She directly refutes the notion that society expects women to pick up the pieces and rebuild men. Why bring someone into your life who offers little practical contribution plus significant emotional baggage you're expected to manage?
Exactly. She reiterates her core message from part 3. Not here to rescue. Men need to find ways to support and save each other.
And she concludes, if they can't or don't elevate themselves, they shouldn't be shirked when women aren't interested. It circles right back to the start.
Women are the baseline, nature selects. To be chosen, men simply have to do better than that baseline.
This perspective on men needing to step up connects directly to her strong critique of what she calls the feminization of men, a topic in part 1, elaborated in part 3.
Right. She holds a very firm opinion that this feminization, as she defines it, is detrimental to everyone, but especially damaging to men themselves.
She ties it back to that list of traits women find unappealing, explicitly mentioning the feminine crying yogi guru type from part 2 again.
She specifically argues that much of the current approach to male mental health and well-being has been feminized. In her view, many men don't primarily need therapy or support groups or focusing on emotions.
As much as they need to fundamentally feel needed, feel powerful, feel competent.
And the current environment, she argues, actively works against men feeling this way.
This is where she expresses a strong preference for what she calls male competence and a clear dislike for things like male leaders emphasizing empathetic leadership.
Which she seems to interpret as a sign of a lack of genuine male competence and capability. She suggests true male compassion, kindness, empathy might look different.
Maybe more like tough love, giving the hard help needed, but with the expectation to get up and keep going.
She touches on the old boys will be boys idea too, suggesting competent women understand and aren't fundamentally afraid of essential male energy or behavior.
Women, in her view, help ensure men don't take things too far, but the goal shouldn't be to suppress or eradicate that masculine behavior entirely.
Competent women, she argues, know how to handle competent male behavior.
Okay, so the author issues a direct call to women in both part 1 and 3. She urges women to keep progressing, keep raising their own bars.
But critically, she cautions them not to attempt to turn men into women by demanding they adopt feminine behaviors or emotional styles. She sees that as creating a harmful imbalance.
She advises women to stop pushing men into therapy if they resist, or telling them they are good as they are. Instead, she says, challenge and push men to be better than you are.
And if men cannot or will not rise to that challenge, she strongly implies they'll be left behind, selected out.
And her final, most direct call is to men themselves. Step up your game. Whatever gave men power and status historically is, she argues, fundamentally over.
Women are now more educated, earned similarly, fully capable of caring for themselves and children independently.
Men, in her view, must now offer women a new challenge, something that elevates the woman's life beyond what she can achieve alone.
Being at the same level as a woman, or worse, lower, is, in her perspective, bad for both the man and the woman in a relationship.
Men, she concludes, must internalize that women are the baseline, and they must consistently do better than that baseline to be desired and chosen.
So, pulling all these threads together across the 3 articles, the author's core argument, as presented in these sources,
is that the historical imbalance, where women were deliberately held back, gave men a kind of structural power. Many relied on that rather than developing their own inherent strength or capacity for growth.
Right, and the irreversible shift towards equality and female independence means women aren't constrained anymore. They have genuine choice.
And now, possessing that choice, they are, in her view, naturally seeking partners who can truly elevate their lives, provide safety, security, capability, especially important, she emphasizes, for creating a secure environment for potential children, that biological drive.
She frames the struggles some men face today: loneliness, feeling lost as direct consequences. Consequences of failing to adapt and elevate in response to women's progress.
And coupled with the end of that historical, automatic female support system that smoothed men's lives from cradle to grave.
The path forward, as she outlines it, is absolutely not for women to step back or rescue men, nor for men to adopt what she sees as feminized behaviors.
Instead, she calls for men to discover or build a different kind of strength and capability, one involving actively elevating themselves, standing up for what matters, especially protecting women when institutions fail them,
and finding ways to feel genuinely needed and competent in this complex modern world.
And her ultimate conclusion, woven throughout these articles, is clear. Society needs both men and women fundamentally need strong men.
Men who have met and surpassed that baseline she describes. Her argument strongly implies that the men who haven't kept pace, who complain about rejection or expect rescue, they're simply not the partners women are seeking now.
And that this dynamic is driving the current social situation, she observes.
So this deep dive is focused solely on the arguments and perspectives presented within Sylvia Ola's 3 articles, just to give you a clear understanding of her particular viewpoint on these complex and, often contentious dynamics.
Exactly. We've unpacked a very specific argument here, and here's a final thought drawn directly from the sources for you to maybe sit with.
Given the author's central premise that women are the baseline, and that, in her view, nature selects based on capability and elevation,
what does it truly mean, in a practical sense, for men to do better in a world where those traditional sources of power and the roles of men and women have shifted so dramatically? Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into a challenging perspective. We hope this has provided a detailed look into the arguments presented in these specific articles.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't miss our future deep dives into fascinating topics. Be sure to follow and subscribe so you can easily find us. And if you'd like to explore the articles we discussed today for yourself, you can find links to them right there in the show description.